Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining IBTTA's Global Road Safety Week 2024. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is LaHood, former Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation. With a 36-year career in public service, Secretary LaHood has broad experience on major national policy issues, among them transportation and infrastructure. He served as the 16th U.S. DOT Secretary from 2009 to 2013 under President Barack Obama, and quickly became known as a bipartisan leader and skilled conciliator in a highly partisan environment. Before leading U.S. DOT, Secretary LaHood served from 1995 to 2009 in the U.S. House of Representatives, serving the 18th District of Illinois. He also served on various committees, including the powerful House Appropriations Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, and of course, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Secretary LaHood, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Pat. Good to be with you.
Mr. Secretary, let's start at the beginning. Tell us how you first got involved in public service.
Well, really, I was teaching school. I was a junior high teacher and was teaching what we called civics back in the day a while ago, and started teaching kids about the Constitution because these were eighth graders and they had to pass the Constitution test in order to move on to high school. And that really sparked my interest in public service and government and politics and really understanding the importance of people being involved. And I left teaching and worked for two congressmen as district staff and ultimately became chief of staff to Bob Michael while he was serving as Republican leader. So my interest was really sparked by the teaching that I was doing with young people and really understanding the importance of people getting involved in public service.
You know, it's amazing how much of an influence teachers can have on us at an early age. And I can remember one of my government teachers in high school really inspiring me to study political science when I went to college. So,
yeah, well, I mean, the reason I became a teacher is because I was inspired by my own teachers. And so I taught for 6 years junior high and enjoyed it very much, but decided to move on to congressional service.
Beautiful. Well, Mr. Secretary, IBTTA's Global Road Safety Campaign, which we call Be Safe Together, seeks to reduce distracted driving, speeding, and impaired driving. Let's focus for a moment on distracted driving. During your tenure as U.S. DOT Secretary, you devoted more time and energy to curbing distracted driving than any other secretary before or since. Talk to us about that and how efforts to address distracted driving have evolved since you led DOT.
Well, Pat, when we came into the job in 2009, not one person was talking about distracted driving. And really, it was not really defined. And part of the reason was because of the activity around cell phones and everybody owning a cell phone. We discovered that there were a lot of very tragic accidents that were occurring, particularly among young people. The idea that you can drive and use your cell phone, you cannot drive safely. And so we, in 2010, held the first summit, Distracted Driving Summit in Washington, D.C., to really try and persuade states that they needed to pass laws and, frankly, to try and persuade Congress that they needed a law. Not dissimilar to what other secretaries did when the .08 was developed around the idea of DUI.
Right.
And that became the standard that was followed nationally. We felt that there needed to be a standard by which if you used your phone while driving, you should receive some kind of citation. And back then, Pat, only 18 states had passed distracted driving laws, and they were all a little bit different. And our idea was pass a good distracted driving law, put some teeth into it by allowing state police and other law enforcement officials to write a citation if you were on your phone while driving. And the first conference that we held in DC, we persuaded the chief of police in Washington, DC. We held this meeting in I think the Hyatt Hotel in downtown Washington. Just outside the door, the police chief allowed some of her officers to stop people who were on their phones and to write citations. So we really generated the kind of interest. The other thing that we did at that meeting, we brought in family members who had lost loved ones as in accidents where distracted driving was the cause of the accident. And these stories were just very, very sad and really encouraged people, including law enforcement, including prosecutors, including others in the criminal justice system, that we needed to really put laws in place, but teeth behind that. And today I'm very pleased to announce that 48 states have passed distracted driving laws. And that is quite a legacy of safety. And you know, Pat, what you said is correct. We put a lot of emphasis on it. During our 4.5 years, we never gave up on this idea. Wherever we went, we would really emphasize, whenever we talked about our safety agenda, which was, you know, multi-purpose, distracted driving was right at the top. And we've made a difference.
Speaking of the rest of the safety agenda, Mr. Secretary, you oversaw a large cabinet department with 55,000 employees and a $70 billion budget. What are you most proud of from your tenure at DOT, and how did safety play a role in your policy priorities?
Every day that we got up, Pat, we emphasized safety, roads, buses. We took a lot of buses off the highways that were not safe, particularly the bus that ran from Washington, D.C. to New York. We saw a lot of students getting on those buses. They would crash, they wouldn't have insurance. So we emphasized that. Pipeline safety falls under the Department of Transportation. Terrible pipeline explosion in San Bruno, California. Several people were killed. I visited the site. We met with the whole industry to really emphasize the idea they needed to have a plan for pipeline safety. The pipelines that run under communities where people have no idea there's a pipeline running through their front yard, many of those pipelines are 100 years old. And we really persuaded the industry to start replacing those pipelines. Airline safety. One of the worst days on the job for me, Pat, was when the Colgan air crash in Buffalo, New York on a very cold night. 49 people perished, and it was determined by the NTSB that pilot error was involved. These pilots, their wings iced up, and they did completely the opposite of what they should have done while they were landing the plane. The plane crashed, and 49 people perished. And the point that I made, all 49 of those people believed that they were going to arrive safely in Buffalo when they got on that plane in South Carolina. And so airline safety, bus safety, school bus safety. We were trying to encourage school bus manufacturers to put seatbelts in buses. And that became very controversial. Airline safety, and obviously automobile safety, a top priority. And we never really were, during our 4.5 years, I'm sad to say, it really be able to bring down the number of deaths on highways. And it's still way too high. It really is. So, and I know you all work on that. And, you know, that's the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, and you're trying to accomplish in these interviews.
Absolutely. And you spoke about pipeline safety, and I'm going to speak metaphorically about another pipeline. We're trying to build a pipeline of young people that when they go through their driver's education and get their driver's licenses, that they understand the dangers of distracted driving, speeding, and impaired driving. And as a former teacher and youth services director, you understand how to work with young people. How can we get through to the next generation of drivers to not drive distracted?
So important, Pat, no question about it. And one of the things we emphasize during our whole distracted driving campaign. We've got to get to the driver education programs in every school in the country. When students begin to drive and when they begin the rules of the road, one of the things they need to learn is not just about the pitfalls of drinking and driving, but also the pitfalls of using that cell phone. Every person now has a cell phone, including every student, and they simply cannot use their cell phones, talk on their cell phones, text on their phones while they're driving. Both hands on the road, both eyes on the windshield, and so we really emphasize this idea of putting in the curriculum for driver education the pitfalls of distracted driving.
You know, I remember when my kids were young and they were in the process of getting their driver's licenses, they had to appear in juvenile court in Virginia in front of a judge. And I was there with them. And the judge said, you know, you're all excited about getting your license and you're going to have this freedom of movement and your parents excited. But I want you to remember two things. I want you to slow down and avoid distraction. And she really put an emphasis on
Wow.
avoiding distraction.
Yeah, that's very, very important. We had a hard time in some states convincing legislators to pass good laws, but we had two summits, one in 10, one in 11, and we invited judges and we invited everybody from the criminal justice system, officers, police chiefs, judges, to really just emphasize the point that the judge made in the case of your own children.
Yep. Well, Mr. Secretary, in addition to being a member of Congress, a Secretary of Transportation, an educator, in your book, you're also an author. So that I want to mention your book, Seeking Bipartisanship, My Life in Politics. And in that book, you highlighted the need for consensus building among policy leaders. And that's something, in my view, that requires acting with empathy and respect, a key call to action of IBTTA's Be Safe Together campaign. Mr. Secretary, talk to us about how empathy and respect have played a role in your advocacy for transportation safety policies.
Well, one of the things that I think is important, Pat, whether you're in Congress or whether you serve in the administration, really understanding the role of, in my case, of transportation and emphasizing safety. And then, you know, really when we were trying to pass distracted driving laws, when I would go to a legislature or go to a state or go to a distracted driving conference, what I would emphasize is the idea that I was a legislator at one time. I know the important work that you have to do. And I also emphasize the role that DOT can play in helping legislators understand the importance of it, number one, but also taking some model legislation that we know worked in other states and trying to get the states to adopt it. And I'm proud, as I said, that 48 states have passed it. But and it's not, there's no politics involved here. There's no political philosophy. This is about safety. It's about the safety of young people, but also adults also. And one of the things that we've emphasized to parents group is if your child sees you talking on the phone while you're driving, that's not the kind of example that you want to set in terms of their driving performance when they get behind the wheel. So it's a multifaceted approach: driver education and parent education and law enforcement education. And if everybody works together, we can really drive down these distracted driving incidents, which in many cases, Pat, young people are killed in car accidents because, you know, they veer off the road, they hit a tree or whatever, and it's just and they're going way too fast to speed to be able to slow down. So what we tried to do is take the idea that we have some model legislation and really take it to legislators, to law enforcement, and to others. And over time, it's worked.
I love your use of the expression working together. And that's really sort of the foundation of our campaign, Be Safe Together. We know that when people get out there on the highway and they're surrounded by 2 tons of metal in their car, they tend to feel like they're alone out there. But they're really not alone. And everything they do, every decision they make behind the wheel affects the safety of every other person on the highway. We like to say one of our taglines of our campaign is the little things add up. What are some of the little things that public and private transportation leaders can do to improve highway safety in the US?
Well, I think one of the things, Pat, which may not be very popular to say, that I've been astounded about when I see these commercials that are running now by car manufacturers that show people they can take their hands off the wheel and the car can be directed. That's a bad signal to me. That's a bad message. I think we need to get back to the traditional ways of telling people both hands on the road, both eyes on the road. Don't be distracted by any of this technology. And to be honest, Pat, if I were still secretary, I'd be talking to the car manufacturers. If they want to put advertisements out, if they want to sell cars, I think the way not to sell them is to preach or to talk about unsafe ways of driving. Even though the technology may be there, it should be used in very little instances. And people should know that they're responsible to drive safely, not only for the people in their automobile, but for the people that are on the highway with them. And this idea that you can take your hands off the wheel and become distracted or look at messages or whatever, to be honest, Pat, I don't buy any of that. I really don't.
Mr. Secretary, I want to talk a little bit about the respect and high regard that you had for the employees of US DOT when you were secretary. Toward the end of President Obama's first term, you sent an email to all DOT employees announcing that you would not serve a second term as transportation secretary. And in that email, you talked about the many accomplishments of the department during your tenure. You also wrote, quote, each of these remarkable accomplishments is a tribute to your hard work, creativity, commitment to excellence, and most of all, your dedication to our country. DOT is fortunate to have such an extraordinary group of public servants, unquote. That strikes me as a very humble and generous statement. Tell us more about that.
Well, look, when you become secretary of any agency, but one that has responsibility for safety in all modes of transportation, you simply have to rely on so many people to make it happen. When we started our distracted driving campaign, we got the safety agency at DOT, NHTSA, heavily involved. What kind of themes do we want? How do we really want to characterize this? Very creative people over a long period of time who have worked at the department were very helpful. Pipeline safety. We came up with some very good ideas for that, only really accomplished by the people at the department that worked in pipeline safety. When we had the Colgan air crash, we made a commitment to the families that whose loved one had perished in that flight. We will work with you on pilot training. These pilots needed to be trained better, and there needed to be more activity around not only pilot training, but work conditions for pilots. And so we worked with Congress, we worked with the families, and none of these things could have been done, Pat, really without extraordinary leadership from within the department, from people who were affected by some of the activities that took place. We put a great team together, and we also used the people that had developed many years of experience at DOT. And there are many people with great experience. They show up every day. They don't really care about the politics of who's president. They care a lot about the policy of safety and really making sure whether it's the driving public, the flying public. And I used to say every day, people get up in the morning, they get on a train, they get in their car, they get on their bike, they get on a bus, and the one thing they don't think about is safety. That's our job at DOT. And these 55,000 employees, almost to a person, that's what they thought about. How can we make roadways and airways and all of these modes of transportation as safe as possible? And they deserve the credit for that. And so we're gratified to have these people at the department.
As secretary, we know that you traveled all over the country and perhaps all over the world promoting safety. And I'll bet you received letters and emails from citizens telling you about their own experiences of safety. I wonder if you could share with us a memory of somebody that you met in person or a letter you received that talked about safety and how appreciative they were of your commitment to safety.
You know, Pat, I'm proud of the fact that during my 4.5 years, we visited all 50 states, 225 cities, 18 countries, and really everywhere we went, we talked about safety. And the people are appreciative of the fact that we emphasize safety, whether it's on motor coach buses where, you know, you have a lot of young people and college students using these buses, and they want them to be the safest possible, and so do we. And that's why we took a lot of these buses off of the roads, and the work we did with families to get better pilot training and more rest. And we work with the air traffic controllers who have very, very tough jobs bringing planes in and out of airports every day, again, on safety. Whenever I would visit a city, either on my way in or on my way out of that city, I always went to the air traffic control tower. I thanked the air traffic controllers for what they were doing, because they were in jobs having almost exclusively to do with safety, bringing planes in and out of airports safely. Right. So we just we woke up every day and thought about safety and really utilized the position we had as secretary to put forth that message.
Mr. Secretary, we're nearing the end of our half hour together. And I just wanted to say, considering that IBTTA's Be Safe Together campaign is aimed at changing driver behavior and encouraging all drivers to use empathy when they get behind the wheel, what final words of wisdom about safety do you have before we sign off today?
Well, Pat, I think that most people that are drivers have had some incident or another with some kind of an accident. Many people have experienced the loss of loved ones as a result of a terrible crash. And I just think when we get behind the wheel of the car, we can't just think about ourselves. And we can't just think about a phone call we need to make or a text that we need to answer. We need to make sure we think about the other people that are around us, what impact our driving has on them, and really try and just focus on the idea that driving safety is not just for ourselves, it's for the other people that are around us that will be impacted if we don't drive safely. And so again, back to your idea, empathy and respect, considering the other people around us as we're driving, not just our own little world that we might be in.
Beautiful. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being with us today. It's really been a pleasure. And to all our viewers, thanks for watching. Thanks for participating in IBTTA's Global Road Safety Week. And be safe together.
Drive safely. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.